All right. Wasn't it that a beautiful song? It's a love song to King Jesus. And that is what pleases his heart. Well, let me share a little bit about the Refuge and the Food Security Fellowship tonight. As you know, over 100 people came together to witness the birth of the Refuge in February 2021 through a beautiful daughter of God, Dr. Grace Young. There was this profound sense that God called his kingdom people to be prepared because of the escalating disasters happening around God's world. These are clear signs of King Jesus' coming. God's heart for his suffering world is to go to where they are. Where are his hands and feet that he can use? The Refuge is responding to God's call to get ready in every way and to go as he directs. Well, the Refuge starts from one person, but when God calls, he also provides. A group of God's servants begin to come around Grace and releases further details from God's heart. Now, barely 3 months later, God initiated activities to execute his intention and purposes, like the monthly gathering, like tonight, Saturday night, right, to hear from God, right? And then Saturday morning, 5 to 7 a.m., the Issachar prayer movement, right, pray and worship together. Then partners like Hand Singapore responding to the disaster in Indonesia. Then on Sundays, 4 to 5:30 p.m., we have solid food Bible study that I'm leading. And a hotline is emerging now to meet the needs of those during this pandemic, especially. They are affected emotionally, psychologically, and mentally. And tonight, the very real need for food in disasters and increasing food prices directed us to God's heart to feed the hungry. But how? That is why we are here tonight. And that is what the Refuge Food Security Fellowship is about. Well, tonight I have the privilege to introduce Dr. Ting Ho, the speaker, who is going to bring us a big feast from God. Well, I met Dr. Ting Ho last year, right, when I was in KL, and through friends, you know, we got to know, wow, he's a brother that really loved the Lord. His heart is so close to God. And what's more wonderful is that he is very keen to share about how to produce food, right? For me, I came from a background of Food for the Hungry International. So automatically, I was drawn to his interests. But God has many, many surprises for us about Dr. Ting. Actually, he wasn't an agriculturist like that. He actually had a PhD in economics and management, and he did a lot of exciting work across the world. And the time comes for him to quieten down. He actually was in Hong Kong and started an NGO while he was working, right? An NGO that would, well, get food issues into the picture of his life. And then he came back to Malaysia, and well, so many things happened. He got 2 farms that he's going to share with us tonight. He has got high-level connections with universities concerning a high-level research on food, production of food, and especially his passion is to revive the soil that food can be produced. Well, it is with all that, you know, and I talked to him further about, wow, what is his understanding of food? Because our ideal food go from fast food, burgers, and all those to the 8-course Chinese meal that we call real food. Well, what is real food in God's heart? What did God make as food that is fit for his people? I'm so glad to hear from him today that he actually did a lot of research into this. Tonight, he's going to open up this whole subject of food security, and it is going to be followed throughout this month of June, every Saturday, same time, right, to expound further areas that is so vital to produce food, right? And who is he speaking to? Well, people like us who may have not that much idea about planting, farming, how to preserve food and all that. Well, praise God. God called him to do that. And tonight he's going to share with us his journey so that we will be able to appreciate God in him doing this job. I pray that we will be inspired to allow God in us to do the same as well. So now it's my privilege to invite him to share with us tonight. Dr. Ting Ho.
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you for the introduction, and good evenings and warmest greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm now in the Sitiawan, Perak, and this is also a food-growing region. And thank you for this privilege and honor to share with you the amazing things I think God has done in my life, and God has led me on this journey. So let me just share with you a presentation, and later on we have opportunities, I think, to ask question and do a question and answer. Can you see now? Okay. Yes. So this subject matter of food security is very close to my heart because I have encountered many times throughout my work, and what I have seen has touched me greatly and transformed me into believing that we have to change. Unless we do that, I think we'll be digging our own grave, and God doesn't want us to do that. And this is not my choice to get involved in food, but rather realization that this is something God has called me to do, and I cannot disobey. So let me just quickly go to my Odyssey, as Homer wrote, how to get back home to God. I recognize that we have strayed so far away that we need to really change. So you see, in advertising, you see this all the time. We feed you as family. It is really a very empty slogan and is used to attract our attention and force confidence. But when you go down to the field and talk to the farmer say, please, sir, please don't ever eat the fruits and vegetables I sell to the market because I have something else for you, which I eat. So I ask this question. Poor farmer who are called or who are given the opportunity to grow food for us, why do they need to serve poison food just to make a living? This question I ask over and over and over. I have no answer. I talk to the scientists. They say you need to have some pesticides, some kind of fungicide to kill off insects, to kill off the predator. And every time we apply certain amount of pesticides, then the insect will develop pesticide resistance. So the next round around, you have to apply more heavier doses of the pesticides. And then the plant get more sick and they produce less. And the farmer say, sir, if I don't do this, I have no harvest. Yes, I understand. But what are the consequences of this pesticide? Many of them cause very serious diseases, including cancer, Alzheimer, Parkinson's. I think if you are in the medical profession, you know the harm. And then ecologically, we know that we damage the soil, we kill the microorganisms, and we reduce the natural fertility of soil. So I pray, it's hopeless and helpless. The only way is go back to what the creator of this universe has to say. So God has awakened in me to understand that our world is not only sick, but seriously sick in body, mind, and spirit. Because we need to live, and because we place so much importance on our own well-being, we can sacrifice the health and the life of other beings which we are meant to serve. So do we really have a servant attitude in us? Do we really care that other co-passenger living in this planet Earth also need to live? Are we so selfish that we can turn against everything, every mandate or every good things the Creator asks us to do, and we do the opposite? So in these 10 years, I dedicated myself. I asked the permission from my family. Let me understand what God has intended human being to do. Are we going to go on this route and eventually we kill ourselves? First, we kill other things. We kill plants, we kill insects, we kill bees, we kill flowers, we kill the microorganisms, and our turn will come. That, from my understanding, is never God's plan. Now, I know a lot of people blame COVID on God and all the things on the environment, but that was not the intention. I will share with you what inspiration I got. So in these 10 years of journey, I have learned a few things. I'm not a smart guy. I'm quite old. I'm 72 years old. As what Pastor said, I'm not even trained in biological science. But the Spirit of God speak to my heart and show me many things that I want to share. And when God made this planet Earth for us to live in, it was a wholesome self-sustaining system, teeming with life, resources, and we are handed this nice environment to live in, a nice house, a nice home to live on earth for a brief journey. But what do? We destroy, we kill, we contaminate, we poison, we cause species extinction, and we render this place almost uninhabitable. So now we think that we should escape from this planet Earth and make some spaceship, go to another planet, and maybe do the same thing. Now, do you think that our Creator God doesn't know this? Do you think He will allow us to do this? And we will stay scotch-free for all the damages we have done through the creation and the things that He had? I don't think so. So, therefore, we should stay away from going forward with this path of self-destruction. We have to turn back and we have to examine ourselves. What are the causes of these damages that we have brought about? It is because of our disobedience, our arrogance, our poor stewardship, and this land in this crisis. Now, this crisis is real, and climate change is real. And let me tell you, there are scientific evidence, there are groups of scientists gathered together, and this is a real crisis we are going through. And the planet Earth is suffering silent crisis because many of the created things, they cannot speak to us, they cannot complain. They are small and tiny, right? So it is our collective responsibility and not to blame on God, to turn from our own wicked ways so that we can continue to live. Now, if we die because we render this earth uninhabitable, we cannot point the fingers to the Creator and say that it is you who has done it. No, it was never the intention. Then I will show to you later that God has a plan for us to how to attain the healing. So God has mercifully shown us a way out of this increasingly challenging world. Now the challenge to us is that will we accept this as our responsibility? Will we turn away from our wicked way? Will we help to restore this planet Earth and restore the blueprint that our Creator has made? So in this journey, I pray, I meditate, and God has given me some inspiration to draw upon the strength from His words. First, He said, this earth is in bad crisis. All His creation are calling out for help, groaning and moaning. So how do we alert the people to it? So of course, as pastors say, I'm badly qualified. I don't even study biology that much. I don't know what is going on. But I call out to God, so what should I do? I'm 72 years old guy, you know. So then God said, I will give you the energy and the passion, you go out. So I say, okay, now if no one wants to do it, then let me try, let me do it. God say, okay, go out and do in my name. You go out and I commission you to alert the people. So the other words God has put in my heart and explained to me the meaning that He has for this. He said, if my people who are called by my name. Now, who is God talking to? God is talking to His own people. And He emphasized twice. Now, everyone claims they are God's children. But God wants to put the second emphasis that our surname bear His name. Then we are real God's children. And not only we are children, we happen to be, but He has given us His surname. So what He wants us to do is very simple. If our heart is with God, first we humble ourselves. Now, what is humility? Without humility, we cannot accomplish much in life because we are incapable. We need to be empowered and empowered with his thought, with his power, and with his authorities. So the second part, pray to me. You see, God wants us to have continuous conversation with him, to ask him questions and to listen to his answer. Now, of course, the answer can come from many sources and many channels. It can take in many forms. But unless we ask the question, God cannot answer us. Unless we pray to him, no answer will come to us to fill our mind, to empower us. And then he says, seek my face. So what is seeking God's face? Is actually seeking his approval. And God's face is everywhere. So if you do the right thing, you see smiles on the face of the people, you see brilliance in the flowers, you can see the plants, the fruits, and you can see the environment, you can hear the birds sing, you can see the insect happiness, right? So turn from our wicked ways, meaning that we should stop immediately doing harm to the ecosystem. Then I will hear from heaven and I forgive your sin and heal their land. I think the most important thing is for God to give us redemption, for us to repent and to seek his redemption to empowerment. The power to heal this land does not come from us because we cannot speak to the microorganism. We don't know their culture. We don't know their language. We don't know how do they communicate. But only the Creator God can do this. So I understand this. I understand my limitation and say, what should I do? And God give me these words, call to me and I will answer you and tell you great and unsearchable things you do not know. So that is the humility. Because you see, unless we humble ourselves, we thought we know, but actually we don't know. But you see, we will never know because this is unsearchable things. We thought that we go to internet, we can find the answer, the search machine. But with the creation of God, the answer is not in the internet. The answer is with the Creator. And now I share with you the last one, the inspiration is, say to them, as surely as I live, declare the Lord, I take no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but rather that they turn from their ways and live. Turn from your way. Why will you die, people of Israel? Now, you know the people of Israel are his chosen people. We are his chosen people. That's why he called us my people who are known by my name. Will he allow his chosen people to die? It's not God that made us die. It's because our wicked way causes our death. So again, in this place, he emphasized twice, turn and turn. You see, how often you see this, your father, your mother repeat? Because the message is so important that he has to emphasize. In this one verse, he said, turn 3 times. Yeah. So now, that's how I know that he is asking me to do something and I just go out and do. So now I come back and use my brain, my education, my understanding, and my little knowledge. We are actually in this period a turning point in the civilization of humankind. You know that up to now, the world has not such a pressure on the ecosystem. But from 1950 to now, the population has tripled. You see, in the year 1950, the world population is barely slightly over 2 billion. And now we are approaching 8 billion soon. So that is an additional 2 billion, 6 billion, so 3 times. 3 times more population. So now, so the other parts about our consuming habit, our production habits, and the way that you manage the ecosystem has caused serious degradation. Yeah. And now we are transgressing planetary boundaries. And to keep this civilization safe, you see, all the insulation, all the barriers that God has put together, separate the animals from the plant, we encroach into the territory of other things that God has put in place, the creation. Like COVID-19, you know that is because of the infected, the virus from the animal jumped to the human and infected human. Before, bats and all these animals had different world to live in, and they are self-sustained, and they are able to live there. So there is a barrier, there's a wall that separates mankind from the animal and for the insects and all these things. Now, because we destroy that barrier, and then we do huge amount of development, so now we get into closer and closer contact with other created beings that can cause us diseases. So humans are now the most significant driver of global change, and potentially and bring about this planetary change, and this called geological approach. And this, they call this Anthropocene, meaning that the human age, you know, human being age. So in this situation, so the unsustainable pattern of production, consuming, and the growth are challenging the resilience of the planet to support human activities. So basically, this message tells us we cannot continue the way that we live without dire consequences. Now, hunger, war, famine are just signs of stress, you know. So food security, now come back. Now, besides food security, there are other challenges. So tonight, I think we just focus on food security because there's already a crisis, food crisis. Every century or so, there are 3 food crises, average about 3 crises. Now, we have a food crisis in 2007-8, and then we have one in the, I think, 1972-73 season. So when food prices go out, usually the poor and the old people suffer more because they have less income, less purchasing power. The rich and the capable one, they can always buy food regardless of how expensive the food is, right? So first, what is food security? So food security, it means the physical, social, economic access to food. Means that you can, there is food to buy, and then you can afford to buy it, and there is a distribution channel, and the food that you eat is quite safe and nutritious. Now, you know the UN SDG goal in 2015, there was a Paris Convention. The United Nations arranged because of climate change, and the panel of scientists has gathered together, say that unless we control the increase of the temperature by 2 degrees centigrade, I will be all gone. You know, I think we cross that border, means that the system has reached a tipping point, and then we have more and more challenges to live on this planet Earth, including stress to plants, stress to human, and diseases. So in that meeting, they come up with 17 US called SDG goals, Sustainable Development Goal. Now, this Sustainable Development Goal has a lot to do with food, has to do with human survival. The second objective of this SDG goal is end hunger by the year 2030, achieve food security and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. Of course, with the COVID, with the beginning of last year, these goals are very far behind, is lagging behind. Now, there's also another measurement, which is Global Food Security Index, developed by the Economic Intelligence Unit, that also published the Economics magazine. Now, Malaysia is ranked 43 in the 113 countries analyzed. So we are not too bad, but we are not too good too. We are falling in the middle. Now, before we are on the 28th, ranking about 28, that is before this index incorporate natural resource management and flexibility, or how do we manage the food production. So the other part about food security is that increasingly over the last 2 decades, there have been not enough emphasis on R&D on food and agriculture. Why is that so? It is because people are complacent that we will always have low food prices, stable food prices. But that turning point is about to be reached. Now, why food security is also about welfare and well-being? Why does United Nations SDG has to list this food as an important part of the global goal to be achieved? It's because food is pertain closely with public welfare and well-being. So if your friend is hungry and you got food to eat, I think our human empathy is such that we will share the food with our neighbor, with someone who is hungry. So there is a natural empathy in us to do that. So if we know that the world today still have 800 million hungry mouths to be fed, and there are children who has gone to bed hungry, so that will invoke our sense of duty to actually solve this hunger problem. So unless this problem is solved, the collective whole of humanity cannot have a peace of mind to know that your neighbor or your friend is hungry, you know, and that food. So in the 1996, I think at the second World Food Summit meeting, they defined what is meant by food security. You say food security is a state that exists, or this state of welfare, well-being exists, when all people at all times has access to the physical and economic access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food. They meet with their dietary needs and food preference for an active and healthy life. So these are very good goals to be achieved for us, for humanity to live as humans, you know. Now, in the case of Malaysia, we are very blessed with a good climate and with a good rainfall. So in turn, a lot of fruits and vegetables, we have the capacity to grow our food and to meet with our own need. But in certain category like meat, like mango, so we cannot meet with our needs, so we have to import. So up to now, we have spent a lot of money to import food. So we spend roughly about 50 billion ringgit to just import food. Now, the other elements of the situation we are in is that, you see, more and more people are turning away from agriculture and going and migrating to the city looking for jobs, because for many complex reasons. I think the first reason is that if you are a farmer, in the eyes of your neighbor and your friend, you are already a loser. Why do you want to do farming? It's so difficult. And the second part about farming is that it is very, very difficult to grow food because the ground is hard. You need fertilizer, and fertilizer are expensive. And then the prices is unstable, the product, and weather is not helping you sometimes, and there will be sometimes total collapse of the production. So the risk is very high to get into agriculture. So much so that people think that we can have an economy without agriculture. So a world without agriculture. But that is, I think the scientists and all these people can talk about. You are eating pills and eating some formulation that come from the bottle and they will meet your needs. But I don't think so, because it's not so simple. So what is the sources of food insecurity? So of course, I mentioned before, there are more mouths to be fed, the population growth. From now to the year 2050, there will be addition 2 billion mouths to be fed. Now the people are already here. Now they are growing out and they will continue to grow. So 2 billion people to feed. How much food do we need to grow? It is estimated that we need to grow another 70% of food. But how do we grow them? This is a big question. So the earth got the arable ground to be grown is already grown. So let's deal with this problem one by one. Now there are also challenges and threats of the global food system, because economically there's a lot of concentration of power, market power. There are only a handful of companies, they produce fertilizer. And the same company, they also produce veterinary medicine. And they also produce pharmaceutical products. And there are also only a handful of companies, they do trading in major crops. So the number of crops that are being grown, the variety of crops has been declined, but the volume of growth become bigger and bigger. So now the world is getting into monocrop industrial agriculture and industrial chemical agriculture. Basically, they employ huge machinery, tear out the ground, thousands of acres, and plant only wheat, or plants only corn, plant soybean. And many of those crops they plant are genetically modified crop, GMO. Small farmers are aging out of the system. Local farmers cannot make a living and they have to fall out and they migrate to the city. So there's a lot of challenges in the global food supply system. Then because they need large scale agriculture, they look for large tracts of land. So go to Brazil and maybe tear out the Amazon forest and go to maybe Indonesia or some places, tear down this forestry, and then tropical forest, which take thousands of years for the tree to germinate oxygen and all this thing. So we do all this thing just for food. And some people say that, why do we need to do this? We can eat insects, we can eat bacteria, and we can eat algae, we can go to sea. Yeah, we do not know, I think, but we will have to examine all these issues and seek wisdom and understanding, right? Now, because of this market concentration, so bargaining power, the supply of food, the variety of food that we eat, so less and less there is biodiversity. The herbs, the food that our grandfather, our father eat will soon no longer be available for us because nobody is growing it, or there is a species extinction. That you see flowers die, vegetables die, certain seed disappearing. So the other challenge is export control and natural disasters. So whenever there is a crisis nationwide, then the country that is producing food will put an imposition of export restriction the food is no longer available from import sources. So domestically, you have to produce. And then, of course, natural disasters, typhoon, flooding, fires, forests, droughts, and climate change contribute to that as well. And then degradation of the soil. We are losing millions of tons of topsoil, which take hundreds of years to accumulate, but we lose them. And also economic stagnation, like especially in the developing countries, because they just have no means to buy food, because they have no income. And then, of course, purchasing power, the national food production policy, all these things add together and cause the fragility or vulnerability of our food safety. So looking at the macro views of how to run a country and how important is food security for a country, for a nation. So at the center of this, of course, is the agriculture and rural economy that impinge on the government, three spheres of influence on the agriculture, on the rural economy. The other part is poverty reduction and economic stability, macro stability, price stability, and political stability. So out of all the interaction of these complex factors, then the food security emerges. Basically, if there is poverty, rise in poverty, and then decline in food security, because people have no means to eat, right? And then if the more people, and then more poor people, then of course, more food insecurity, you know. So again, you come back to the current economic regime, the economic philosophy that is prevalent today. So today, most decision maker, policy maker, most government depend on two things: free trade and market-driven economy. What does market-driven economy and free trade means? Your country does not need to produce food if you can buy in the world market. If the world market food price is cheaper than what you can produce, you might as well ask your people to go into manufacturing. Yeah, but that kind of mindset may be workable when there is no global crisis of any kind, when there is no war and there is no serious climate change or destruction. The world is at peace, harmonious, so you engage free trade. Now, as you know today, our trade regime is falling apart. And everybody is talking of bilateral trade, no longer multilateral trade. The World Trade Organization is in despair. So can we still continue to think that we can always import food? There will always be abundant supply of food out there for us to purchase. Now, that's a question that we have to ask. Now, as to we earn the money, so long as we have money, we can buy food. And someone will grow the food because there will be enough poor farmer. There are no other choice to make but to grow food for our need. I think perish the thought. Today, farmers are also moving to the city. And a lot of farms, lands in the country are abandoned. Now you go to all the rural areas, they are no longer engaged in food production. You ask them why. I am poor, I'm old, I'm helpless. My children has migrated to the city to work, and every month I receive some money so that I can afford to buy food. I no longer need to grow food. So this idea of growing food is below the dignity of a well-educated gentleman. I think that is also hurting our food supply, domestic food supply. Now, of course, there's a lot of other complicated factors, but I would just, just let you know that it is a very complex situation to maintain food stability and food security, because eventually it becomes a political goods. because there won't be any political stability unless there is food security. So you know that making politics as part of the food security is quite challenging, right? Because it depends on how critical is the issue of the time. So when a lot of people call out for action, maybe certain action need to be taken for the short term. But this short-term solution cannot bring about lasting food security. So coming back to our own country, Malaysia, because over the last few decades, we believe that the way to move forward to reduce poverty is through industrialization. That means to say we encourage the setting of factory, we encourage going to manufacturing. So less and less emphasis has been placed on developing the agriculture, except in the large scale or the industrial agriculture like oil palm. And now rubber, I think less and less, more and more into oil palm, concentrated on oil palm. Food production has been relegated to lesser important in the country. Now, we imported a lot of foreign labor, legally about 3 million, but illegally, I think maybe another few million, you know. We know that most of the industry are run by foreign workers because the way that we look at the labor, right? The way that we examine this. So most of the domestic citizens or the citizen of the country has gone into services industry, you know. We don't do even the labor intensive society. So what we do trading, we do all this high tourism and all this. But as regard to agriculture production, less and less important. And also financial resources, competition for investment. Very, very few people will invest in agricultural food production. We thought that those industries are suited for Bangladeshi or people from Myanmar to get into production and to run our pasar borong, you know. So our investment in those industries is very low. Now, land prices is another contribution. Now, in terms of how do we increase productivity without investment, without innovation? It is almost impossible. So we have not done enough R&D, and therefore we are still engaging old method in food production, which I will talk about more later. And then, of course, Malaysia is not an island. Malaysia is just a member of the world community. So when the whole world is in food crisis, Malaysia will get impacted somewhat. So now, coming back to this food insecurity or food security, Malaysia is not self-sufficient in rice. So we still need to grow about rice is our staple food. So we import close to 1 million tons a year, mainly from the country, our neighboring country, Thailand, Vietnam, you know, and India, and to meet with our need. And then 60% of our agriculture land is in oil palm, rubber, mainly large plantation industrial crop. 40% are family holdings, 1 or 2 acres, 1 or 2 hectares at subsistence level, and much of which is now being abandoned, and then all being managed by foreign labor or contract workers, right? So coming back to this, so the problem is quite clear. So our export is mainly oil palm, and then 21% of land is under FELDA and FELCRA, and again, main crop is oil palm and rubber, and the food production is very, very small. And then, so now, what about the currency? Food prices is already on the rise. In some cases, it's 40%. Now, coffee has gone up 51%. Milk, orange juice, sugar, oats, Now, will this COVID affect food price increase further? Quite obviously, it will. Because with COVID, many producers are constrained to go out and plant crops. I talked to rice trader. They say no one is planting rice because people are staying home. And then Brazil is getting bad weather this year. And then soybean prices rising. And China, which has gone to famine before, is stocking out. They buy out a lot of soybean, maize, corn, as a safety stock. So we are really in a situation that we have to prepare, like Pastor Koo say, preparedness. Now, then come back to assessment of what have agriculture, knowledge, science, technology for development done over the last 50 years. So this organization, this assessment led by United Nations made an assessment. The conclusion is that unless there's radical transformation of the world food system, food and farming system, we are facing economic and environmental crisis. And we have the danger of not able to feed the people they are coming on this planet Earth. So that is the warning, a clear warning from the United Nations. Now, what can we do? So after knowing all this, of course, after I do a research in 10 years, so what should we do? I think God said, come to me, come back to nature, because you cannot solve this problem. No human being on their own is able to solve this. So now I just want to again summarize for you what is the existential concern. So there was a great influenza in 1918, the scale of which is more severe than what we see today. Because today they say about 4 million people has perished, has died. In 1918, because it lasts for 2 years, and it was the great influenza that ended the First World War. There was estimate about 60 to 1, I didn't know. There are about 200 million people died at that time, out of a population of only 1.8 billion, because at that time they didn't know that this influenza, great influenza, actually caused by virus. They thought it was certain bacteria. So can you imagine the devastation that take place after the First World War, and then you have this influenza? There was a huge food crisis at that time. Will this kind of thing happen to the world after COVID? We have to ask this question, but we have to be prepared. Now, are we aware? I think as a community, that we are losing a lot of global biodiversity losses, climate change, environment challenge, dramatic increase in non-communicable diseases. Do we need to be concerned? What can we do about this? Now, these are all pertinent questions that we have to address as a fellow passenger on this planet Earth. So come back to this. On the right-hand side, you can see that by the year 2050, the agricultural production must increase by about 60% globally in order for us to feed the growing population. But our food supply, about 95% of this is grown in soil. That is what Pastor has said. We have to pay some attention to soil degradation. So how degraded is our soil? Now, if you know that 33%, 1/3 is already gone, are already degraded. And then if we continue at this rate, of degradation, by the year 2050, 90% of the topsoil will be lost. Now ask ourselves, 95% food is going in the soil. Now, we have only 10% of topsoil left. So are we not in a crisis? I think cannot be clearer than that, right? Because the population increasing, the capacity to grow on the soil is less. Now, then the last one is very important. Sustainable land management. How can we feed the world? So now you can understand, I think, why many people are promoting urban farming, taking the tall building, convert to the food production system, because this is a serious, serious problem. Can urban farming replace agriculture, or will we be living in a world without agriculture? So these are very deep and profound questions. So over the next 2050 is not very far away, my dear brothers and sisters. It's only less than 30 years away. One generation, maybe and a half, no? But that gives the burden in my heart. Say, how are we going to do this, Lord? What are we going to do this? This problem is not little problem. This problem is humongous problem, right? So we say, awake the people. Let the people know this is a serious problem. So in terms of action, I asked God, I'm just a little man, but he said, you are not alone, so go and do something about it. That's why I thank God that God has brought Pastor Koo into my life and Sister Grace into my life. So these are our hands, our legs. So I appeal to you, brothers and sisters. We are already in a crisis, not waiting for crisis to come. We are already in the midst of the crisis. So how do we cope with the near term? How do we cope with food importation disruption? Suppose there will be a disruption to our food supply. We are net food importing nation. So we know that we are selling agricultural product, but we are already 18 billion in the negative, meaning that we sell our exports from the agriculture, we need to fork in another $18 billion to pay for the food in order to eat. So you ask, how crazy is this? Malaysia is a land with the agriculture land. We grow food to feed the world with the palm oil, but yet we have to pay the money so that we can feed ourselves. So that's again another very profound question that we will ask, and maybe some politician can enlighten us. So how secure your domestic food sufficiency? So this is a question I don't have the answer. So I am praying every day so that I hope God can enlighten us how to activate the grassroots farmer community. Now, this is what I appeal to you, brothers and sisters, so that we can, what happened? Huh? Yes. So the only way to do is to let the people know the truth, and the truth will set our people free, and let them think about the challenges we face collectively as a community, right? So what that we can do, personally, I begin to understand the way to overcome this is to raise productivity, reduce the input cost by 20%, and involve the local farmer in planting, tending crops, and facilitate replication nationally with all the technology. So I just start doing it as an example. So using my little saving money to do this, maybe it can be done, but God has put this in my heart. So I just based on faith and going and do it, right? So show that natural farming with the local herbs and food crop can be grown, and we integrate the technology innovation with university partners, because I'm not trained in the agriculture, but I have built a global network of scientists through my years of work globally. And I visited labs, I visited farms, I visited farmers. I believe by working diligently, we can get it done. And it must be a community-centered practice to engage small farmers, meaning that everybody is involved. And we prove that it's economically viable and to supply the community needs. And it's a bottom-up innovation and adopted by family holdings, and then replicate nationally for food security and public health. So this can be done. So I just want to show that what can individual do, even small farmer, even a person like me who is not trained in agriculture can set out to do, and need not be failure. So now I want to show you, share with you, what is the back to nature strategy. So first we have to accept we are nature. We are part of nature, and nature is part of us. We are God's children. God is part. The nature that I talk about is not what you see nature. It's what God nature for us. Can you hear? So nature contains a treasure trove of knowledge and wisdom for our benefit. Basically, our creator, God, has made all this for our benefit. So we force nature to conform to our human intelligence is neither sustainable nor beneficial. Now, I say that God asks us to plant the crop on the soil, on the ground. So I think we better grow on the ground rather than grow somewhere else and try and see whether it works, you know. And humility, being observant, innate curiosity, relearning, backtracking, and then all these things will allow us to discover our way back. We ask questions, how to go back. So sometimes we are lost, we go astray. We ask about the prodigal son, you know, he has strayed so far away. How he got back to the father's house? By asking along the way, right? Nature enriches, empower, and really allow us to do this. So the goal, I think, is achievable if we put our mind together and we pray, we humble ourselves, we pray, we seek his face, we turn from our wicked way, you know. I think we can do it. So I just share with you what little thing I do. So sustainable life means sustainable agriculture. In order for sustainable life, we have to be sustainable agriculture, equating it. Healthy life means healthy agriculture practices, because we are very close to the earth, to the soil, because remember, God made us from dust, and he told us, from dust you are, and to dust you will return. So this is living thing, you know. So next time I will tell you how. Why soil is alive and why soil can help us. So we also need to do soil rehabilitation and sustainable soil, and then decrease the impact of chemical, minimize environmental impact, and food and herbal product with minimum chemical residue and high quality product. There's healthy products. Now, I don't go to this detail because I think we can. So now come back to the two farms that I developed. I go to this quickly and then I think conclude so that we have time for question and answer. So I draw on my own little savings and I invested in the fish farm. Try to understand, I think as what God let me, what is the symbiosis relationship between plant life and animal life and human life. The fish is the closest thing I can relate to the human life, right, to animal life. And now I try that. And I also grow a farm in Kuala Pilar. Right now, I'm developing another place in Sitiawan to do soil remediation. So I started learning by small tank and grow the food, and I grow the vegetable, I grow the plant on top. Now, why plant? The plant roots I discovered is the best filter for water. It can filter the water, and plant can pick up the waste from the fish and to be a nutrient. So there's a recycling of nutrients at work here. And this system grows very well. The fish is helping the plant is helping the fish. The plant is not only recycle the waste, absorbing the waste, but injecting oxygen into the water, oxygenating water. Because you see, the creation is very amazing to me. There is no free lunch. You know, God has made, there's always a fair exchange going on. So the fish will get the waste to the plant, and in exchange for the food the plant eat, the plant gives the oxygen back and clean the water for the fish. So they live very happily. So I have this brother Nigel, he's from England, and work together with me, and then we work happily to try. He is also a missionary in Cambodia. And then I commercialize it from the thing, and let me just share with you how this thing look like. You see, it is I commercialize it so that I can grow a lot of fish in the water. I can now grow about 100,000 fish in this pond, in one pond. So use the technology to make production, to raise the production. So it raised the productivity by 10 times that normal ponds can deliver. So are the fish healthy? They are very healthy. Look at this fish. You see, they grow in swarms, you know, and then you can feed them, and they grow fast too because the water is healthy, and then they are less diseases, and mortality rate normally in the aquaculture, the mortality can be 40 to 50% from the fingerling to adult. But in this case, in this case, it's less than 3% of the fingerling that perish. So I invited, you see, my friends, Dato Mustafa, our Minister of the Economy, Prime Minister Department, and now I asked my friend Nick Amin to help me to manage the farm, because you see, I go about the developing new farms, you know. So the fish grow very well, and they go out to about 1.5 kilo, and they taste good. In addition to tilapia, this tilapia, we also go jade perch. Now jade perch is growing more slowly because we buy the fingerling from the Australia, and now we are in the process of having our own nursery that can breed this jade perch. You see, the fish is healthy and tasty. You know, you can cook in many styles, and there's no mud taste, and they're perfectly well. So there are a lot of people now, they say that, well, you can sell to the restaurant, you can sell to us. But what I want to say is that this farm is not set out to make money, but to demonstrate the technology and to transfer the technology to the small holders, to the people who want to participate into food security. So you know that I was trained as an economist and as a businessman. So I know that it's very important to network with people who share the same concerns. So I go out to the university, and then I talk to the chancellor, I talk to the scientists. I say, how I need help. So of course, God will open many doors if we seek his help. Knock and the door will be open, right? Ask and you will be answered. So this is what I do. And then I signed the MOA with them. I'm also signing an MOA with the University of Malaya, the called Institute of Ocean and Earth Study. And then, of course, in this farm, I built a container housing unit so that I can put the lab inside this. So I believe technology holds a lot of answer to help us to improve the productivity. So I work with University Putrajaya on looking at the herbs development, looking at food security, food safety, particularly food safety with the lab. And this is some of the things with the UTM, with the he is the vice chancellor, current vice chancellor now, Fauzia, Dr. Fauzia, professor. And then I show you now Kolapila farm. So I start taking a farm which is abandoned for 20 years and cut down the trees and revive the land and use no pesticide, pesticide free. And then God said, don't put the poison on the earth. I listen. So will the insect eat out all my crops? My friends are very cynical, you know, this will not work. So I say, well, my Father in heaven asked me not to put pesticide. So let me see. So you see, I go through all the process, dig out the drain, clear the ground, and then put the greenhouse for the germination, and then germinate the plant. And then you see my friend Dato Mustafa has come to see this. Not Dato Mustafa, this is Dato Seri Idris, you know, he's the chairman of Felda chairman, and he is kind enough to pay me a visit at the Kuala Pilar farm. And of course, with the UPM people and with his team of people to come. And it's all about people, I think. If we want to make any movement, you have to engage the people who share the same passion and need. This is Dato from the international school. And then my friend who is Tang Seri Said Jalaluddin, the former vice chancellor of the UPN and chairman of the Ben Rayat. And all my friends, I invite them to come and give me advice. These are my team. They work on the field with me, fellow farmer. Now I show you how the farm is doing. So I grow a mix of fruit trees, all of them come out and no disease so far. So thanks God. So you see, God will send his guardian angels, I think, to guard his own farm. You know? So I thank God every day. So please help me, Lord, because I don't know what to do with your creation, you know. So you see, they all grow fast. And this is chili padi. And they asked me to grow these mangoes, and mango all growing up, and also grow herbs. And then the other part, restoration of lost species of plant and animal. So meaning that he asked me to take some of the plants, some of the herbs, they have already gone out of existence, and ask them for some sample and grow them so they can be done. And soil bioremediation, some of the soil is denuded of vegetation and cannot grow anymore. The soil is almost dead. So God said, put life into the soil. And how to do it? Very simple. Take the manure and take the brewing and then put the compost and then try out. Bring life back. And they all come back. And you see, the first harvest, after a few months, there is good harvest. And then you see all these are harvests, you know, cucumber and pumpkin, they come out, the pumpkin field. And then of course, papaya and the lime and all kinds of fruits and the vegetable, they come out. And then you see, man does not live by bread alone. Our creator God also asks us to enjoy life, not just to have this, a lot of pressure. So he gives good flowers, you know, and these are the herb. So this herb is called misai kuching, and the other is makisa or passion fruits, you know. And then what does the future portend? Now this is the end of what I can show you. And then so far, the two projects are making good progress and gaining traction. People are coming to know, people coming to visit. And there's also, through this effort, there's increasing awareness that we need to go back to nature. And grassroots support for regenerative agriculture is increasing globally. Food as medicine. So I think if we eat well, we take food as medicine, we don't need to take medicine. Now, Pastor Ku wants me to say something in the next time about food as medicine. I have spent many years studying Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, and also the super plant and so on that we can share later. So international collaboration through networking More are joining to restore health to the ecosystem. Has now adopted United Nations SDG goal is now being adopted in most countries. Healing Mother Earth has become the top priority globally because there's more and more recognition. So support for small local farmers also increasing. So I just end with some quotation. Small is beautiful. Even though we are alone, sometimes we are small. We thought that we are powerless. But this is the book written by economist Shoemaker in 1973, says small is beautiful. You see, wisdom demands a new orientation of science and technology toward the organic, the gentle, the non-violent, the elegant, and the beautiful, right? So, wisdom. So coming back to wisdom and knowledge. Now, I like to leave with you with this. There are earthly wisdom and heavenly wisdom in James talk about. Now, earthly wisdom, there's a lot of envy, self-ambition. Then, of course, we engage in a lot of evil practices, including industrial chemical farming, consolidation, merger, making more money, and all this price control. But the wisdom that comes from heaven, first of all, is pure, peace-loving, considerate, submissive, full of mercy, good fruits, impartial, sincere. And may Lord make us peacemaker to this world, this troubled world. And let us sow peace and we reap a harvest in his righteousness. So there's also a meditation corner in the farm so that we can spend time next to the forest. So thank you very much, brothers and sisters, for your valuable time and for your listening. And thank you again. I thank God for this opportunity to share the little thing that I'm able to do. Thank you.